Sarah Marie Cornell entered the world on May 3, 1803, likely in the quiet village of Rupert, Vermont. She was the daughter of James and Lucretia Cornell. Lucretia had been born into privilege, a child of an old Puritan family. Her father was a prosperous Connecticut merchant and a paper maker. But that life of comfort ended the day she married James Cornell, a man who worked in her father's mill, and whom her father despised. The marriage cost Lucretia her family support. When Sarah was still an infant, James abandoned them. With no means to care for 3 children, Lucretia was forced to send Sarah's older brother and sister to live with relatives. Sarah stayed by her mother's side until she was 11, when she was sent to live with her Aunt Johanna in Norwich, Connecticut. As a teenager, Sarah apprenticed as a tailor. By 1820, she was working in Beaucereville, but stability didn't last. By 1822, she had entered the booming but grueling world of New England's cotton mills, first in Killing, Connecticut, then drifting from one mill town to another, North Providence, Jewett City, and Slatersville. Her reputation began to follow her. There were whispers, accusations of theft, and behavior deemed improper for a woman of her time. In Slatersville, between 1823 and 1826, Sarah found religion. She converted to Methodist, determined to reform her life, but fate intervened. In February of 1826, the mill burned to the ground. Once again, Sarah was on the move to Branch Factory in Massachusetts. Early 1827 brought another move, this time to Dedham. Weeks later, Dorchester. In May of 1828, she arrived in Lowell, Massachusetts, a booming mill town where she worked as a weaver. It was here that she first met a young Methodist minister named Ephraim Kingsbury Avery. Sarah's relentless journey continued. By May of 1832, she was in Woodstock, Connecticut, working as a tailor in Grindle Rawson's shop. That summer, at a Methodist camp meeting in Thompson, Connecticut, Sarah crossed paths with Reverend Avery once more. By then, he was a minister in Bristol, Rhode Island. It was here, it is alleged, that Avery seduced her. In October of 1832, Sarah moved to Fall River, Massachusetts, lodging with Elijah Cole. Her pregnancy was becoming visible. She sought medical advice, and by early December, she had moved again, this time to the Hathaway residence on Spring Street. Her life had been a chain of departures and arrivals, of hope and hardship. But in Fall River, the final chapter of Sarah Marie Cornell's story was about to begin, and it would end in a scandal, suspicion, and death. In the cold light of morning, Farmer John Durfee made a grim discovery. The lifeless body of Sarah Marie Cornell hung near the Fall River shoreline. She was quickly identified by a Methodist minister. Later that day, among her belongings at the Hathaway residence, investigators found a chilling note, dated the very day she died. The note was not the only damning evidence. Letters suspiciously incriminating surfaced, and a local doctor recalled a conversation in which Sarah confided that the married Reverend Ephraim Kingsbury Avery was the father of her unborn child. The coroner's jury in Tiverton was convened before an autopsy could even be performed. Their verdict, suicide by hanging, driven, they say, by the wicked conduct of a married man. But when the autopsy was finally carried out, the truth deepened the scandal. Sarah was 4 months pregnant. The second jury, this time in Bristol, Rhode Island, rejected the suicide finding. They named Avery, a respected minister, as principal or accessory in her death. Avery was arrested for murder and just as quickly released. Even in death, Sarah was denied dignity. Her pregnancy led a Methodist minister to refuse her burial, claiming she had only been a probationary member of the church. The Fall River congressionalists stepped in, burying her on Christmas Eve. That night, outrage boiled over. In Fall River, money was raised, committees formed. By morning, a steamship carried 100 men to Bristol. They surrounded Avery's home, demanding he face them. He refused, sending a friend to calm the crowd. Eventually, the men withdrew. In Bristol, an inquest ruled there was sufficient evidence to try Avery. Rumors spread. One of the justices was a Methodist accused of protecting the church from scandal. Fall River's deputy sheriff, Harvey Hardin, secured a warrant from a Rhode Island Superior Court judge. But when it was served, Avery was gone. January 20th, 1833, Hardin tracked him to Rindge, New Hampshire. Avery claimed he fled for his life, fearing the mob that had once surrounded his home. He was extradited to Newport, Rhode Island, jailed, and on March 8th, indicted for the murder by a Newport County grand jury. His plea was simple: not guilty. The trial of Reverend Ephraim Kingsbury Avery began before the Supreme Judicial Council. The prosecution was led by Rhode Island's Attorney General Albert C. Green, alongside former Attorney General T. Gerald Pierce. The defense, 6 lawyers strong and funded by the Methodist Church, was headed by Jeremiah Mason, a former U.S. Senator and New Hampshire Attorney General. For 27 days, the courtroom was a stage for one of the most sensational trials of the era. Under Rhode Island law, Avery himself could not testify. Defendants in capital cases were forbidden from speaking in their own defense. Instead, the battle played out through witnesses, 68 for the prosecution, and an astonishing 128 for the defense. The defense's strategy was clear: dismantle Sarah Cornell's character. They painted her as utterly abandoned and unprincipled, a woman of loose morals, plagued by suicidal thoughts and mental instability. Witness after witness testified to her alleged promiscuity, and to the fact that she had been expelled from the Methodist Church for fornication. The prosecution countered with a broader accusation that the Methodist clergy operated like a secret brotherhood, willing to protect one of their own at any cost. A medical debate emerged over whether Cornell's unborn child had been conceived in August. But Victorian-era propriety made frank testimony about a woman's body nearly impossible. One female witness, when pressed, refused outright. On June 2nd, after 16 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict: not guilty. Avery walked free and returned to his pulpit. But outside the courtroom, the public was furious. Effigies of Avery were left hanged and burned. In Boston, he narrowly escaped a lynch mob. The anger extended to the Methodist Church itself. In an attempt to calm the outrage, the church's New England Conference held its own internal trial, chaired by Wilbur Fisk. Avery was acquitted once again. But it did nothing to quiet the storm. In the years that followed, Avery tried to clear his name with a speaking tour. The effort failed. By 1836, he left ministry altogether, moving his family first to Connecticut, then New York, and finally Ohio, where he lived as a farmer. He published his own account of the case. Ephraim Kingsbury Avery died on October 23, 1869, as a free man in the eyes of the law, but forever condemned in the court of public opinion.